Welcome back to this Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Now, with me in the studio, Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, and Jide Ologun, legal practitioner, National Development Advocate, and Fellow at the Institute of Leadership Coaching and Strategy. Well, Prof. and Mr. Ologun, thank you. Always very regular. So
thank you.
Let me thank you for your, commitment. Now, today we have had two guests on the program. First, Senator Victor Ume, discussing the controversial Electoral Act 2022 Amendment Bill against the background of the Senate President saying the work has not even been completed yet. And the Minority Caucus, of which himself is a member, having a press conference and saying, well, what has been decided is that the electronic transmission will not be real time, but that there will still be electronic transmission. Further confirmed by the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Amukwiton, to the extent that, look, the most efficient thing that Nigerians should expect is the BVAS, which is important, and that the INEC is determined to employ technology. The standard argument they have given, those who say there will be no real-time transmission, is that in at least 9 states of the Federation, you cannot guarantee that the infrastructure for real-time electronic transmission will be in place, which could lead to further complications. And then we had on the program also Engineer Bex Dagogo Jack, who has been involved in the power reform, electricity sector reform process in Nigeria since 2010. He served on the Presidential Committee under President Jonathan. He was chairman of the Presidential Power Transition Committee. He was involved in driving, leading the process for the NIPP, the integrated power projects, and then drawing up, documents for the value chain. And he was also on this program. He says successive governments are the ones that have failed, not because the original concept, or reform was wrong. All of that. Electricity being very important to us. I try to interrogate some of the issues raised. Let me start with you, Mr. Ologun.
Thank you very much. Let's start with the Senate that is amending the Electoral Act further. Yes, I quite agree with Senator Akpabio that the Senate cannot be intimidated. But in public relations, it's instructive to know the perception out there. So the response from some of the citizens, it should guide them in doing what is right. And I dug deep into that narrative and realize we have a long way to go, and we can shorten it by deliberately developing the country. For instance, if you are saying that 9 states do not have network, in this age and time, Nigeria is over 65 years of age, having left the hold of the colonial masters. And I think when you talk of development, we should not even be discussing that in this era. So what you should do is not to make an excuse for putting in place a policy that will establish transparency. So what stops these states from escalating to the level where the network is available? Because according to him, that means if results are not transmitted real time, it means there are no elections in those areas. I mean, whatever we can do to scale up. The global standard for elections is that it should be free, fair, transparent, and credible. And that credibility is the acceptability. If BVAS can function, then let's have it. But according to him, they have not concluded on this. So I want to advise that please, currently we have voters' apathy in the country because many have lost faith in the process. So you have to do what we call transfer process, the Jeffkins transfer process, to engender the interest of the citizens to vote. But I understand that right now the Senate should be having a plenary on Tuesday or so, and I hope this is one of the issues that will come up for them to trash out. And that brings us to the issue of electricity. I am amazed and I'm compelled to travel to history. In the early 1890s, when the colonialists were trying to urbanize Lagos, they started having the issues of burglary, and they introduced these gas lanterns to scare away these burglars. And I recall that I think in 1896, the first installation was done in Ijora. That structure is still there now. It's abandoned already for those who want to see it. And in 1923, we had the Nigeria Electricity Supply Company, and it has been going through reforms till this present age. And it's quite embarrassing that a country like Nigeria, so blessed, has not been able to upscale energizing the economy and the social life of the citizens. Recently, a reference was made to Egypt, that in Egypt, it is like this. In Egypt, the citizens have 100% access to electricity. And I think we have not been serious. It's now been reported that about 7 trillion naira has gone into electricity projects in Nigeria. What has happened? Corruption is still there. And if we identify that corruption is a critical problem, Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says that the state shall abolish, not may, corrupt practices and abuse of office. So who are those responsible for these corrupt practices? You talk about the Mambila projects, different kinds of projects. So I want to appeal to the government. You see, even God, when God started in Genesis chapter 1 in verse 3, he said, let there be light. You cannot run away. Even if this is what you achieve for your citizens, it will speed up the development that we have. Imagine what Senator Akpabio said, that networking, which is correct. Right now, what megawatts do we produce in Nigeria? The national grid keeps collapsing. And I quite agree with him that you need to decentralize all this archaic approach to energy business. I recall the deal we signed with Siemens and things like that. So it's not just about having these reforms intentions. It's about implementing effectively and catching up with the pace of development across the globe.
By the way, the same Siemens that was brought to Nigeria and failed here, although they may say, well, they are still on a presidential power, committee, is the same Siemens that succeeded in Egypt.
That is a corruption.
Why is it that companies succeed anywhere else? They don't succeed here. Professor Aworawo.
Well, I want to begin just from where Barrister Ologun also started. But I disagree with him that how can Akpabio come and say we can't intimidate him? What does he mean by that? Many of them in that National Assembly, if they shut down that place and they tell them to go, they will be poor people. We know many of them in 1999 who couldn't afford flight to Abuja, who went on night bus to Abuja. They are not very rich. They can tell us that we cannot.
You know some of them.
I know
Name them. Name them. In the spirit of transparency and accountability.
Night bus to Abuja.
Who are those ministers?
let's leave that one. People
living in 3-bedroom flats who are now building mansions.
Who are now multi-billionaires. They are coming to say you cannot intimidate. People are saying things that will be able to transform the electoral system, the political system. That is what will instill confidence. We have had an election and the thing is transmitted real time. It is not for nothing that people are shouting. These are real concerns. If there are challenges, Akpabio can say, well, these are the challenges, but let's see how we can address the challenges and still get to where we are going to. Not to come and tell us that nobody can intimidate us. Do they stand there on their own? They stand there for Nigerians. Anyway, they say the process is still on, but let's hope that the comments people are making will make them to revisit that. And the question to ask is, those 9 states, don't people transfer money in those places? Doesn't government not collect tax stamp duty from people who send money and collect money in those places. In 2018, the one they want to amend now, the law was made. As I was saying last week, we are trying to appeal to the president. That time it was even passed. We are appealing to the president to sign. We know people were very close to government then who told us that Buhari will not sign. You want him to sign himself out of office. So, and this is real. So people's concern that they don't want to add that so that it will give a leeway for people who don't meet up among them to be able to read. It's not unfounded, because we know that one of the reasons why some of these things are like that, people who are close to government tell us. We are appealing to them, whatever the challenges, they should try and address them so that result will not only be transmitted, but transmitted real time. There is also this controversy about transmission and transfer, which is almost becoming an issue now in laws that are passed. That laws that are passed, all of a sudden, the one that they now present will have things different from the one that went through the National Assembly. It's concerning. Gradually, it's now becoming, we had it in the tax act, and now gradually, it seems that it's almost now becoming a pattern. It's a pattern we should move away from. Just like Barrister Ologun said, elections have to be free, fair, transparent. That is when people will be interested in the electoral process, one. And that is also when people who are elected to office will perform. Because if you know that whether you perform or not, you still win anyway by changing figures, you will not have responsibility to perform. So there's a whole lot that is built into it. Fortunately, Akpabio has said that it's a process that is still ongoing. Our concerns of Nigerians should be addressed. We should see it as a challenge to overcome and not a problem that is insurmountable. Those are my comments on that. Then power. Yes, you raise a point. We are talking about industrial transformation, industrialization. How can we achieve that without power? I agree entirely with Dagogo Jack that governance is a continuum. If there were some flaws in the reforms that were carried out under President Jonathan, that was 11 years ago, we cannot continue to dwell on that in 2026. Whatever those issues are, they need to be addressed so that we can have regular power. Now, CMNs, they will sign several agreements. One of those who went to sign agreement was Sole Mama, who is now back and forth with EFCC. We remember Ologun, back and forth with EFCC. So the corruption thing is not conjecture, it is real. And in between Ologun and
those persons being interrogated by the EFCC, you can't accuse them of corruption.
Yes, I say back and forth. EFCC, they are not guilty. They are only accused. Yes, yes. Allegedly, yes. EFCC is they are back and forth with EFCC. Okay. Nobody is saying that they are guilty or they are corrupt or whatever. We're only saying that these are pointers to why some of these things have not worked. And there was a point he also made that Dagogo Jack made, and that is the point that we need to have, he's not confident of these things being sorted out soon because he can't see any roadmap. And I agree entirely with him. If there were flaws with the reforms as inherited, how are those issues now addressed? What is the framework for correcting them so we can move forward beyond just saying the reform was not well carried out? And that comes to the issue of those who are appointed to office. The person there is not an engineer, he's a banker. And some of the times the comments he even makes by saying, oh, the power is steady. Even when the fuel price went up, he said the reason people were not protesting was because power is so steady. You have to admit that things are bad, then you work to correcting them. But when you assume that everything is okay, then the incentive to want to work hard to correct it will not be there. And I'm surprised that is the case. So President Tinubu, the Minister of Power needs to wake up. Nobody is saying they should remove him. But we do know that once upon a time we had a professional, Bartholomew Naji, 2011, 2012. In all my adult life, that is when we had the stablest power. I don't know whether it's by coincidence that the man, an engineer who was also committed, was the one there at the time, or some other factor. But power was very steady at the time. And if I was President Jonathan, all those people came to complain, and then that led to his removal, I would just say thank you, and then whatever issue will resolve it so that the man could continue his good work. Unfortunately, he was removed, and we seem to return to where we were before he took over. So professionalism in that sector is important because that's a critical sector if we are actually interested in industrial transformation.
Okay, thank you. Let's take another subject. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and First Lady Senator Oluremi Tinubu are set to pay a state visit to the United Kingdom from Wednesday, March the 18th to Thursday, March 19, 2026, following an official invitation from King Charles. The two-day visit will see the Nigerian president and First Lady hosted by the British monarch and the Queen at Windsor Castle, marking a significant diplomatic engagement between Nigeria and the UK. The announcement was made via the royal family's official X account, confirming Tinubu's acceptance of the invitation. Details of the visit's agenda are expected to be released in the coming days, highlighting areas of bilateral cooperation and mutual interest between the two nations. Meanwhile, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu this past week played a deft soft power card, leveraging First Lady Oluremi Tinubu's faith profile at a sensitive moment in bilateral relations between Nigeria and the United States to reopen warm relations with the Donald Trump-led administration. Mrs. Tinubu's appearance at the 2026 annual U.S. National Prayer Breakfast came against the backdrop of a recent diplomatic spat that appeared to have cooled engagement between Abuja and Washington. However, the calculations seem to have paid off publicly when Trump singled out the First Lady in the congregation, acknowledging her presence and offering warm remarks, signaling renewed receptiveness after months of aggressive rhetoric against Nigeria, and that sent a clear message that Nigeria was perhaps back in positive view. Trump described her as a respected figure and noted her role as a Christian pastor in the largest church in Nigeria. Well, Professor Aworawo, let me come to you this time. You teach history and international relations. How important is this?
I will start with that of Senator Oluremi Tinubu, because that one has happened. Events in Washington that she attended. It's interesting, it's exciting, it's positive. Where you have tensions rising, as we had between Nigeria and the U.S., from the pronouncements of the U.S. president on October the 31st, 2025, and then the events that unfolded after that, you think that things would bubble over. But the government seemed to have listened to advice. We spoke about this and we said government needs to calm down. You don't fight someone you cannot beat. Just, move around, juggle around without being self-defeatist, and then you'll get there. It was the American, international relations expert, Joseph Nye, who first coined the term soft power and then propounded theories around it. Go by persuasion, culture, and not, politics, military and all that. And this is just a calculated move, which has been very, very positive. Trump is not known to be so generous, but he was. And, as Tinubu's calmness, and I watched the clip, and I was happy. Her comportment, her demeanor.
You felt like singing, "Now our mama be this, so we no get another one. Now our mama be this."
So that is good. I mean, she exploited soft power maximally, and those are things that will calm tension between both countries and improve relations. And then the follow-up is this proposed visit that will take place in March. It's a long time that the British monarch invited Nigeria and the head of state or head of government, as the case may be. So that too, we expect that they'll be able to leverage on that visit to address areas of disagreement and see where more cordial relations will be established and expanded upon. And of course, trade, investment and all that, which always goes, anytime the president visits, he does that. Economic diplomacy since the 1980s. Nigeria will benefit, Nigerians will also benefit from it. They should just be calculative, just like, the Washington meeting that the First Lady attended. and ensure that everything goes smoothly, we'll all be happy for it.
Mr. Ologun, well, you are the public relations expert.
That is a lovely PR and diplomatic win for Nigeria. In public relations, we call it endorsement. So for a Donald Trump, who with his team classified Nigeria as a country of particular concern, to now acknowledge our First Lady as highly respected and belonging to the largest church in Nigeria, and that should be the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Doctor, you know. And there's
well,
something...
some people are challenging that too.
With Trump?
No, they say the Redeemed Church is not the largest church in Nigeria.
Trump just said it, so...
But Trump said he does not make it right. How much does Trump know?
So,
but it's one of the biggest churches in Nigeria.
Oh, okay, like so that. You qualify.
No debate. Well. So, Doctor, you see, if you benchmark this with previous comments, particularly from Donald Trump, in previous tenures in Nigeria, you will know the importance. There was a time in making reference to even the president of the country, he made a very derogatory comment, but that has passed. And again, there's something of interest here. Our president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is a Muslim, and he has been able to manage the religious difference within his family, because the First Lady is a Christian. So I counsel the state, talking about Nigeria now, to see how we can leverage to introduce harmony into our relationships. And then, obviously, there are other things to benefit from this warm relationship. For instance, I read that the AGOA has been extended to December 2026, even though America has more exports to Nigeria than we have to America. So we all need these relations to move on as a nation. And for the visit to the UK, to Prince Charles III, it has its root in a 2024 interaction, and it will be delivered in March. And the concern of UK, though, is economic. It touches also on security and some other issues. So if the government can leverage on these diplomatic wins and see how the fortune of the nation can be transformed to scale up and deliver good governance to the citizens as outcomes of the ongoing reforms, it should be tremendous, because I look forward to that season when, as it is written in the Word of God, that the people will really rejoice. So I wish the president the best on the diplomatic scene, particularly when there were many insinuations about his relationship with the US and things like that. That we are making progress. So,
okay, let's come back home and talk about JOHESU. Health workers on the platform of the joint health sector unions, JOHESU, have suspended their nationwide strike, which had lasted for 84 days. The strike was called off following an emergency meeting of the union's National Executive Council. The meeting was convened to review the outcomes of the recent conciliation talks between the federal government and JOHESU, which considered all the issues in dispute. In a communique issued after the meeting, JOHESU stated that the strike was suspended to allow for the full implementation of the terms of agreement reached during the federal government-JOHESU negotiations. The communique, signed by JOHESU National Chairman Kabiru Ado-Mijibe and National Secretary Martin A. Egbanobi, stated that the federal government has accepted to immediately commence collective bargaining talks with all the aggrieved health workers' union, with a view to resolving once and for all the issue of the CONHES salary. 84 days. Before the 84 days, when the Union of Health Workers, including laboratory workers, pharmacies, and other categories in our hospitals, went on strike, they served notice, 14 days. After 84 days, they served another 14 days notice. The Trade Union Congress said they will join them in solidarity to extend the strike. The National Labour Congress also joined them, and then government suddenly woke up to take another look at agreements that have been reached in 2021. So, meanwhile, 84 days, maternal mortality went up, infant mortality went up in our hospitals, and now we say, it will be resolved. Well, it depends on what they do hereafter. But should we clap for the federal government for waking up at last since 2021? Mr. Ologun, let me start with you.
Thank you very much. In industrial relations, you focus on achieving harmony. And that means you must amplify the welfare of stakeholders and ensure there is justice and equity. And like you said, it appears that one party in the bargaining is a giant while the other is just shouting behind the curtains. And I want to advise the government to please realize that productivity is crucial and that the welfare of the citizens are tied to these professionals that handle this critical sector of our national life. So I appreciate how the federal government eventually resolved issues with ASU. So if now negotiations are prompted, implementation is crucial. When I was making reference to the fact that Senator Akpabio cannot be intimidated, obviously, now I can compare with the salaries they earn there and what they enjoy. I mean, they are far ahead. And that's why I'm saying, look at the citizens, because without the citizens, there cannot be a nation. You see, that's a critical sector, and health is important. Section 17, subsection 3 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended amplifies the need to provide health facilities to all citizens, not few. So with all the reforms of this government, if there are things that can be done to ensure that once these agreements are renegotiated and agreed upon, that you implement, that is the important thing, then you can have the harmony. And we save our country from the brain drain we have. And back to Professor Aworawo, I'm asking a question now. Do we have brain drain in the National Assembly? No way.
There can't be brain drain if you didn't have money to take flights. And now you can fly private jets. So why will you be brain draining to? We all know this simple theory of
Prof, do you have proof that our senators fly private jets? You don't have proof.
Your own comment in the course of the week, you said somebody is you use one French term of somebody was massaging somebody somewhere. I read it online. Your comments on it, that one senator was doing, you use one French.
I didn't mention private jet.
You didn't mention private jet, but I mean, that thing happened in a private jet. Anyway, so let me just comment on this. You asked a question that should we clap? Why should we clap? You see, we should take issues as they are. We are praising the government for the First Lady's breakthrough in Washington, the proposed visit to the United Kingdom in the next couple of days. Those are good. But why should health workers be allowed to be on strike for 84 days? Those who have died, who will resurrect them from the dead? No. This is just a signal of monumental failure. Professor Ologun made reference to ASU. I would recommend that the Minister of Health go and confer with our good friend, Dr. Lausa, on how, all the crises and conflicts in the education sector, how some have been handled and others are being handled. Never ever, before this strike started, we discussed it and we said, we are confident that since they are given 2 weeks notice, before the 2 weeks will expire, the issues will be resolved. But behold and lo, nothing happened. And after the strike started, nothing has happened until very recently. This should never ever happen. They should confer with each other those who have done well, like Dr. Lausa has, so that they can use that model to resolve all of these issues. And of course, just like Professor Ologun has also said, ensure that implementation is carried out faithfully, so that this kind of thing will never ever experience it again.
Well, Prof, I'm glad to hear that you are praising the Minister of Education.
Yeah, of course.
He has done the needful.
Yeah,
no. Of course.
Something entered at the end of January.
Nothing has entered.
What has not entered? This is February.
Yes, nothing. You see, when I speak for Nigerians. I don't speak for myself. Nothing has entered. In fact, my salary this month, in January, is lower than they took task.
You are taking money from cooperative. They probably deducted that.
Look, why? If it has, I will say it has. And then
Okay, Prof.
It hasn't.
Let us know.
But I know
when the BEMU begins to arrive.
but I know the minister is. I mean, from our interactions, I know he has done well.
Okay.
He has done well. There was a minister that didn't listen to us now, and we just abandoned us and abandoned 1.8 million Nigerian children for 2 years out of 3 years. So if somebody is doing what the minister has done, we should praise him. These things are contextualized. The health minister should take a cue and solve the contradictions within his own ministry.
Sector. Okay. Now let's go to Enugu State, where an Enugu State High Court has ordered the United Kingdom to pay £420 million in compensation to the families of 21 Nigerian coal miners killed by British colonial forces in 1949 in what the court described as an unlawful and extrajudicial violation of the right to life. Delivering the landmark judgment, Justice Anthony Onovo held the British government liable for the Iva Valley massacre and directed it to pay £20 million to each family with 10% post-judgment interest until full payment. The court also ordered a formal apology to be published in national newspapers in Nigeria and the UK and urged the Nigerian government to pursue diplomatic engagement within 60 days to enforce the ruling. Well, the big question here is it enforceable? The 1949 Enugu Colliery massacre, 21 killed, 29 injured, policemen led by F. Phillips, a colonial official. Now, is it enforceable? But there's also the historical side of it. So, Prof, maybe you take the historical side, and Mr. Ologun, you take the enforceability of this ruling by the High Court in Enugu State.
Yes, the Iva Valley massacre was one of the sad moments of British colonial rule in Nigeria. It was one of those things that reminded Nigerians that, the British were just here to exploit. It was a legitimate, strike for better conditions, and the British police decided to respond with force, leading to many deaths and extensive injuries. One of those sad moments of British rule in Nigeria. Yeah, and families continue to remember it with sadness. People were just mauled down and killed. Family heads. People were just struggling to make a living. Who were killed in that. And of course, one of those things that inspired people to come together to fight to end colonial rule. And fortunately, we were able to achieve that in the 50s, so that by October 1960. Nigeria was able to attain independence. But like you said, the ruling has been made, but how will it be enforced? Of course, I'm also happy about a part. The judge didn't just rule and go away. He said the government should, interact with the British authorities within 60 days so that the enforcement can take place. So he already set a path to enforcement, but how far the authorities are able to do, that remains another issue entirely.
Mr. Ologun.
Thank you. There's what we call sovereignty immunity. We are talking about UK and other given in Nigeria. So that is there. And diplomatic approach can be brought. But even the UK government has stated that they've not even received a copy of the said decision.
They will.
So how far we can go, we are monitoring. But let me state this, and it will help us. In the reforms we are passing through, there is what you call the software of an institution and the hardware. The software is the mindset, the spirit behind it. It's, the police system in Nigeria dates back to 1832. So you can see why that system was put in place. Have we been able to refine the system not to be acting in defense of the government? Because this is an ugly situation far away, but we still have instances like the Makoko experience and some experiences where tear gas are fired at citizens and things like that. So we need to sit down as a nation. If we are now saying the colonialists should pay compensation, then how much of compensation would Nigerian government pay to Nigerians for some of the human rights abuses? So those are issues. But by and large, we want to monitor and see how the matter will proceed. But if that compensation comes, I hope that stakeholders won't begin to fight over it, like the Abacha loot that was recovered.
Okay.
So,
just before we go, one more topic. U.S. President Donald Trump has removed a social media video which included a racist clip depicting former President Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle Obama, as apes. The clip, set to the song "The Lion Sleeps Tonight," was at the end of a 62-second video he shared, containing claims about voter fraud in the 2020 presidential election. Speaking to reporters on Friday, President Trump said, "I didn't make a mistake." He added he had only seen the beginning of the video before it was posted by a member of his staff and didn't know it contained that depiction of the Obamas. Republican Senator Tim Scott, who is black, had called for the president to remove the post, describing it as the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. Well, very quickly, Professor Aworawo.
I'm really shocked. Really shocked. This should never happen. I advise President Trump to apologize and stop doubling down on all that has happened, even though he has deleted it. It's really shocking. It shouldn't come out of anywhere, not to talk of the government house of the largest democracy on earth. I advise President Trump not to allow any of this kind of thing to happen again. He should apologize so that we can move on from this very ugly topic.
Mr. Ologun.
I adopt that position. This is what we call advocacy in public relations, and the White House should be a revered office, in terms of what is presented to the world. So he has denied watching it today, and that's another caveat also. Leaders should follow through in terms of anything representing their position. I also agree that apology should be rolled out, and God owns this world. That's what Psalms 24 says. So this racism must be stepped aside, for us to benefit the blessings of the world. It's quite ugly, particularly for such an exalted office.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, Mr. Jide Ologun, and thank you, Professor David Aworawo. I look forward to seeing you again next Sunday. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.